All right. You there? You froze.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the screen.
It's
Like,
just your face.
yeah, yeah, that damn thing. Um,
Welcome back to the Plug In for More podcast. Mike, it's surprising to me that we're doing one of these recordings yet again without Brian. He's on vacation again. Do you believe that?
yeah, I don't even know who Bryant is at this point. Apparently he's in Thailand.
Eating
So
scorpions?
yep, eating scorpions. I saw that. That was disgusting.
Welcome to Plug In for More, brought to you by EVUniverse.com. EV Universe is your one-stop shop for all things related to the electric vehicle. Here on this podcast, our goal is to educate, inspire, and hopefully make your transition into the electric vehicle marketplace a lot less intimidating. And now, here are your hosts, Mike, Tom, and Bryant.
But he can't defend himself, so I'm happy about that. Big news in the EV world, though. So it's a quick segue. Um, so you can charge your Mach E, Ford Mach E, on the Tesla supercharging network.
Allegedly, that is the case. Now, Ford is providing free adapters to those who got onto their clunky website to order them once you got through all the website shutdowns. I was able to order my adapter. The adapter is free from Ford, but I'm gonna have to wait until like May until I get it. So once I have that adapter, then yes, I can use at least the current version superchargers. I know like the supercharger in my town is an older version, and the Mach-E isn't able to charge on that one. But once you get into the Tesla app, you can plug in your vehicle and you can see what superchargers are available to your car.
Very nice. So we're talking version 3 and the upcoming version 4s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then I got my Rivian back from my little bang up. So just got that back a couple days ago. So big news there is that Rivian now has access to the supercharging network. However, they are not shipping adapters quite yet. So I want to dive into this for Ford and for Rivian because it's interesting. So the terms of service for Ford and for Rivian is that essentially no third-party adapters to make these things, to work, or they're not going to cover damages potentially to the vehicle if something were to happen using the supercharger network. I think that's very interesting, especially how Rivian did it because they made this announcement. They sent out emails that we now have access. I even got a notice with my update in my car this morning that we now have access to the supercharger network, which is great. But there's really no information on when those adapters are getting shipped out. And so I think it's pushing a lot of people into third party adapters. Now, obviously, we sell a lot of different components for EV chargers and the adapters that go along with them. And we have an upcoming call with one of the CEOs of one of those companies. So we're going to dive into that question more Um, with that CEO. We can't say who it is quite yet, but really excited for that conversation. But they pushed this stuff out for Rivian and didn't really have a solution. And I don't know if that was the best move. Like I love what Rivian does, but I think that was kind of a misstep there, in my opinion.
I had read that the actual adapters are being manufactured by Tesla.
Yep. Yeah.
So maybe Rivian is just stuck in a queue of waiting for Ford to get all theirs out, perhaps, if there's a shortage of adapters.
Sure. Sure.
'Cause
But
I know
then
there
just don't send that email. Like just don't hit go. We know how that works. So it's that's
Yeah, okay.
anyways. That's kind of my opinion there.
So you kinda glossed over, you just got the Rivian back, which is exciting, but with all that damage, it was gone for so long. I mean, that concrete pillar really did a number. What sort of things did you run into that was different that, like, took longer? Because I know there were some hangups with it.
Yeah, so the hangups, because it really wasn't from an accident perspective that bad at all. I mean, there in this repair facility does all the Rivians in pretty much North Carolina. There's a couple other spots, but they do the vast majority in Raleigh and some other areas, and they do a great job. They're well known. There was a bunch of other Rivians that were really messed up in that parking lot.
Mm.
So some of the different factors and why it took 6 weeks. Number one is if you go there and you see how busy they are, they're just stacked up. They are a extremely busy repair facility. There's no place. They're double stacked in the parking lot, so you can't really park anywhere. So that's number one, just being busy. Number two, there was an issue when they painted the paint ran, and so they had to repaint. So that put us back another 3 4 days just getting in the queue and doing that. And then the probably the longest thing that took almost a full week was the calibration. So when I had the accident, it took off the rearview mirror, and then because of the camera setup, they had to recalibrate it. And there's only one camera or one machine that does it, and I believe it's built by Snap-on Tools.
Hmm.
And this repair facility doesn't have one yet, and they're waiting for it. So it had to be shipped, the truck on a flatbed 2 hours away to have it worked on, sit at that repair facility while they do the calibration, even though this thing is done, and then they got to ship it back on a flatbed. Um, and so that whole process took, I think, another 5 or 6 business days to do. And then as soon as it rolled up, they called me, come and get it.
Gotcha.
And so that was great. But yeah, so it took a little bit while. I think it's a lot of this is partly because Rivian's a newer manufacturer, and they don't have all the um, they don't have the network of repair facilities and all the components to fix every piece of it. Like Tesla and the other OEMs out there.
No, that's good. I'm glad you got it back. And on the Rivian vein, we haven't talked about it yet on the podcast. I know it's a little bit of stale news at this point, but the R2 announcement and then the surprise R3, which I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love that R3. It looks very
Hmm.
retro, and although it doesn't work for my family, it would be a fun toy to have, I think.
Absolutely, I think that thing's gonna be a hit, and the number of reservations they've had so far,
Hmm.
I mean, that thing's gonna go. I know there's some questions out there. Is Rivian gonna make it? Um, y- I think if you look at it from a business standpoint, I mean, right now I think there's 16,000, and don't quote me on the exact number. I think 16,000 of the Amazon vans out there.
Hmm.
Number one, that are Amazon owns, and um, they're all over the place. I mean, I see them all the time. I know when I was in Illinois, they're everywhere. Um, their ramp is pretty darn good. They're not having issues like Lucid or what happened with Fisker. They're good quality vehicles. They're burning through cash, yes, but I can't imagine Amazon is just going to let them go down if they've got 16,000 of these things. And it's a big part of their process. Are they just going to deal with that happening? I don't know. I have a feeling that there's going to be something that happens with Amazon helping out if need be on those. But I guess that's not kind of my question, or I guess my point with the R2, R3. There's a ton of reservations on those things, and I think it's really compelling, the R2, especially versus the Model Y.
Yeah,
More traditional interior, that kind of thing. So I
right.
think it's been good.
Yeah, and the price points on that, I mean, the R2 starting at $30,000 less than the R1. Like, just that alone is going to lower that barrier to entry for a lot of people, and obviously puts it in a better ballpark for tax credits and stuff like that. So it's, um, you know, I personally I like the idea of the smaller vehicle. I don't think that I could get away with doing a 5 seater. My next vehicle is going to be some of 3 rows, something I can get 7 people into, just because my teenager doesn't like sitting in the middle row or the middle seat of the Mach-E now, so I'm stuck with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and frankly, the way they have it packaged for like cargo, that's I think better than the Model Y. Frankly, it's going to be
Mhm.
faster than the Model Y by about a half second, 0 to 60. Which you, I mean,
It's
we don't
absurd.
need it. It's absurd. Yeah, you mean 3 seconds, 0 to 60 is crazy. It's faster than the McLaren F1. Um, do you need that in a 5 seat like crossover?
Family car.
No, no, absolutely not. But is it cool? Yes, it's super cool. Love it.
And speaking of super cool cars, our guest today is David Michery, the CEO of Mullen Motors. And David and I had a good talk about their battery technology and where they're headed with solid state and some of the upcoming vehicles that they have. But if you're not familiar with Mullen, they are primarily producing commercial vehicles like work trucks of that nature. So we talk about that quite a bit through the interview, but they also have a pretty exciting car that they're going to be releasing in 2025. It's the Mullen RS, which is going to be essentially a hypercar but packaged in a crossover style body with some pretty impressive specs.
Fantastic. I know it's a great conversation. Listen in. I think you're going to find him very intriguing and a lot of cool information coming out that hasn't really been talked about in most other streams, in most other channels.
You're listening to the Plug In for More podcast. If you're looking for information on electric vehicles components, or information on how to reduce your carbon footprint, look no further than evuniverse.com. evuniverse.com is your one-stop shop for all things related to electric vehicle.
David, thanks for joining us here on the podcast. I would love to give our listeners a chance to know who you are and what you represent, and tell us more about your company.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So, Mullen Automotive is an electric vehicle commercial manufacturer that produces Class 1 and Class 3 vehicles. We acquired Bollinger Motors last November, and we acquired controlling interest. They produce a Class 4 through 6, so we're locking up basically the portfolio of commercial vehicles that can and will be available for sale here in America, Class 1 through Class 6. So we're 1 and 3, they're 4 through 6. We're currently in full production. We produce vehicles out of Tunica, Mississippi, and we're in the process of selling those vehicles. Currently, we sell through a portfolio of dealers, one of them being Randy Marion, which is the largest commercial vehicle provider in the United States. We're also actively pushing Bollinger forward. They start production of their Class 4 vehicle mid-year this year, and we expect it to do some good things. They were had a lot of visibility, and they're bringing in fully homologated and certified American-made forward chassis vehicle that I think is the Mercedes-Benz of the commercial vehicles. And, when you talk about like Isuzu and, the guys that are ICE vehicles that are in that cab forward chassis space, then, I would make Bollinger the Mercedes of that class. And then where we sit, we're the workhorse, we're the Toyota. And I mean that in a good way. I mean reliable and just good quality product. So that's kind of how I view our product portfolio.
Great. Now, through that part of the conversation, you're talking about Class 1 through Class 6 vehicles. For people not terribly familiar with the automotive industry, what do those classes represent, and how does that translate to somebody looking for a car?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you an example. A small van, right? As an example, let's say you're a florist and you deliver flowers. As an example, you'll see those smaller vans around town, wherever you might live. Similar to that, right? Like a Ford Transit, something small,
Gotcha.
right? So a smaller vehicle, it could be upfitted for cold storage, hot, delivery, for example, as an example, quote unquote. So, we've been exploring, those type of possibilities. Also, Class 1 could be used for package delivery. We call it last mile delivery. It's small enough that it can maneuver in tight to get areas, and it has capacity enough to hold a substantive amount of what I would say goods, packages, whatever you want to carry in the back compartment on a delivery last mile basis. Then you move up a little bit into typically what you see today. You'll see a Class 2 vehicle in circulation used by a portfolio of companies. We took it one step further. We went a little bit bigger. We went to a Class 3. A Class 3 vehicle is a cab forward chassis, but it's designated 10,000 pounds or greater. So
Okay.
you're looking at a good sized vehicle, and you can configure it in whatever form factor to your specifications. So like, let's say I'm going to use an example. Let's say you're Walmart, and you have a lumber department, and you want to deliver lumber. You could have a stake bed, so you could have it upfitted with a stake bed just to meet your needs. Let's say you're Home Depot and you have a pretty large horticulture gardening department, and you're tailoring your needs to delivering sod, delivering fertilizer, plants. So maybe you want a little bit more of a, not just a stake bed, but an actual, container, as an example, right? That's open. So maybe their needs are a little different. But where I'm going with this is that it could be upfitted to any configuration. So we like that better from a class 3 perspective, that it enables us to almost upfit to your exact specifications. So we went from class 1, which there's no competition in it currently. All of the gas ICE vehicles that were in it all vacated the space because they didn't want to be compliant to meet all the new mandates that require them to be electric. So rather than spend the billions and billions of dollars to do it, they've chose to exit. So we looked at it as a wide open space in class 1, and we're the only guy there that's fully homologated and certified for sale in the US, EPA certification, and sitting there with class 1 currently today. I know that some other guys like Hyundai came out and said, we're going to create a class 1 vehicle, but it's 3 years from now. So I don't want to hear about something from 3 years from now. I want to know about today. So today we're the only guy in the space. So, we're pretty excited about that. And we're also working on next generation battery technology that will expand the range of our class 1. So I'm sure you followed some of the PR that we've released previously regarding our solid state technology. But, we're looking to take our range and double it if we can, to give the consumer the maximum amount of range for a last mile delivery vehicle and get rid of range anxiety. Even today, your bigger, call it class 3 vehicles by your OEMs, the bigger guys, right, with the best range possible, these guys are pushing 120 miles in range.
Right.
How much better would it be if we can come in with over 200, right? So, it just, what we're doing is we're working on ways to get to that point and to be able to be the most efficient from a safety perspective, from a cost basis, and from a liability perspective. So reliability to me becomes the number one concern here, and safety, meaning, are you dealing with safe cells? And when you deal with solid state polymers, you're dealing with you're dealing with solid electrolytes, and so in a battery you have an anode, a cathode, and you have an electrolyte, and your electrons pass through. When you have a liquid electrolyte, it's subject to explode. Basically, it can't be intruded. It can't mix with water. So you get these issues where you have what we call dangerous goods. So when you move to a solid state polymer, basically a silicon-based technology, you completely eliminate the dangerous elements, the raw earth dangerous elements that you have to mine, like your nickel, your magnesium, your cobalt. These are all dangerous materials, right? Elements. So we're working towards the future and providing a safe solution from a cell perspective that translates to the vehicle. So as an example, you could take a torch and burn a hole right through a solid state cell and nothing will happen. You take a torch to a lithium iron phosphate cell, you're going to get one hell of an explosion.
Right.
So, or you're going to get a fire that you can't turn off.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen these cells burn underwater. So and we're laughing, but I mean, it's a reality. It's a risk factor. So we try to eliminate a lot of that risk by looking at how can we think out of the box and create technologies that will benefit the consumer, down the road. And so we're proud to say that we're in our class 1. I think a couple of weeks ago, Jason, a month ago, we announced that we're actually testing it in the vehicle.
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago, we had an announcement where we have done road testing with that solid state battery vehicle in the class 1 cargo van. So that's something that we have a really active programming on right now, and lots of good updates coming forth.
Just on the early stages, I believe the percentage of gain between conventional chemistry And
Hmm.
our solid state, what did we announce? Was it a 70% increase in range?
Correct. Yeah.
It was a
Wow.
70% increase in range. Just initial stages. Could get
Sure.
better. So where I'm going with this is we're on the right path, right? You as a consumer, let's just say you run a small little business, call it a gardening service, as you
Sure.
see all over America, where you got these gardeners that pull up in these vans and they carry their lawnmowers and their hedgers and their equipment, their blowers, right? Imagine now, you have a electric solution that can get you from point A to point B. Most of these guys operate within a 100-mile radius.
Yeah.
Now, there's no longer the what I call range anxiety. If you have like a 200-mile range, you can cover. Most gas vehicles don't in a given day travel 200 miles in a day.
Right.
So I think that's kind of like the magic number, in my opinion. So with that too, we're also exploring other ways to be more efficient. But I like the possibilities with the class one on the commercial level and how it opens it up not just to fleet services, but it opens it up to the small guy that's a gardener.
And I don't want to misquote you on this, but I took in some of your other interviews, and I think I heard you say something to the effect of, "We are a technology company that dabbles in automobiles."
That's right.
And hearing you talk about this and the battery tech and going to the solid state form, like it's cool and it's obvious that that's your focus, which it's encouraging to hear.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, when I started this thing well over a decade ago, I wanted to build a car, and I knew I wanted it to be electric. And so my first dabble with an electric vehicle was the Mullen GT,
Okay.
which Microsoft, ironically, Bill Gates' company, one of their first commercials, oh God, 20 years ago, was with the Mullen GT. You could actually go find it somewhere online. It's Microsoft and Mullen Automotive, or I'm sorry, Mullen Motor Cars, and you'll see the Mullen vehicles, and they did a Microsoft commercial with the Mullen GT. It's a little race car, and it's positioned all over in this Microsoft commercial. Early on, Microsoft. And so how I got into the space is I bought Mullen Motor Company, or motor cars. And I knew that there was something there because I knew that, Forbes at one time, it's funny, you'll see an article had them listed as one of the most potentially progressive vehicle companies because they were literally in the electric space before there was anybody else in it.
Hmm.
So I bought it in 2012.
Okay.
From a retired military officer, a guy named Arthur Allen, who passed away not too long ago, but served this country in Vietnam and Korea, and just a really good guy. And so when he retired from a career in the United States military as a high-ranking officer, he wanted to build a car, but he wanted to build an electric car. So I became friends with him, and then I bought the company. And then I said, how could I progress this forward? There were like a lot of great things. Like I remember being able to go on, at the time, remember when there was MTV Cribs?
Yeah.
And I remember that he was selling this Mullen vehicle. And I remember seeing the lead singer from Linkin Park, I think it was, who's no longer with us, but you could see video. He was one of the buyers of a Mullen GT. And
Hmm.
so I knew that the car had garnered a lot of attention. So it just so happened that I just didn't think at that time that a sports car, even though Elon came later with the Tesla Roadster, which was a Lotus Elise,
Hmm.
I felt that I wanted to focus on more on a wider, broad spectrum vehicle like a sedan. And so I found a company called Coda Automotive that had spent $750 million to try to homologate a four-door sedan. God, it was ugly. And I bought them out of bankruptcy. So I bought
Okay.
all the assets between, call it from 2012 through 2018. I accumulated. But in that accumulation of assets, I also accumulated a lot of battery technology. So,
Gotcha.
a lot of times people come to me and they're like, so how did you just, like you just fell out of the sky and landed on your head and wow, you have solid state technology? No, man. I mean, if you really look at the history of it, we've been around for a long time, and, We took over a facility in Monrovia, California that had been around for a couple of decades. It was Coda Energy, and that's where they were building battery packs in 2011. In 2011, they were building battery packs in Monrovia at Coda Energy. So think about that. When did Tesla come around? So the point I'm making is there's really a lot of battery experience and knowledge floating around this company. But we don't brag about it. People say, "Hey, man, why are they so lucky? How did they be able to do this when the gazillion dollar companies can't do it?" You can't put a price on knowledge, right? It's knowledge and know-how, and the only way you garner that is through time and experience, right? If you have a gazillion dollars, doesn't mean you're going to get to a solution faster than a guy that has no money but he has knowledge and know-how. How do you explain, Nikita Tesla? He had no money, but let's talk about alternating current. I mean, prior to him, we had what we call direct current. We weren't going to get anywhere with electricity. It was his genius that came up with the solution on how to have electricity be able to travel distances through what he invented, which was called basically today AC, alternating current. It didn't cost him a dime, but he was able to think about that, and he was able to, be the guy to come up with the knowledge and the know-how how to implement that. So I always tell somebody, people have the misnotion that if you don't have a gazillion dollars, you can't do something. It doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it's the discovery aspect of it, right? All the money in the world can't have you discover something if you just don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge or technology to do it. So where I'm going with this is I'm not saying we invented the wheel, but we purchased the assets from the people that were ahead of everybody else. Like one of the main principles was a guy named Peter Nortman, who started a company called Energy CS. First guy to invent the hybrid. He invented the hybrid drivetrain for the Toyota Prius for Toyota. Peter Nortman with a company called Energy CS. This was back in 2005 and 6. Peter Nortman's company, Energy CS, eventually became Coda. You follow me?
Yeah.
But see, nobody does their research all the way back to determine on, where did Mullen find all this technology? Well, they think we just pulled it out of our ass. Excuse my French. But there's a source to it. Anyway, but we take the criticism. How does a small company like yours be, able to do this? You're a liar. You cannot possibly have solid state polymer. You are an absolute liar. Well, you saw the vehicle driving around Michigan being tested with the pack in it. I usually believe, proof, right? Physical proof in your face. How do you deny that? But you get people that just, if you're not BASF and didn't spend $5 gazillion, then it must be fake. But, again, I think experience outweighs and trumps everything. That's my opinion, right? And there's a lot of that over here, a lot of experience.
Yeah, and I can get behind that. And as you're telling the story, I'm reminded of it's not a tale, but it's the Wright brothers and how they were pitted up against a government-funded entity to come up with the first flying machine. They're doing it out of their bicycle shop, and yet they had the passion and the desire and the know-how, and they outperformed other larger entities that were trying to accomplish the same thing.
That had a ton of resources behind them and still couldn't do it.
Correct.
Well, there you go. Think about all the guys right now today that still today in America that don't have a solid state solution that has been. Do you understand when we announced 3 weeks ago a solid state pack in a vehicle? Do you understand how groundbreaking that should have been? It got no attention. No one gave a shit. Do you understand the magnitude and significance of that? Maybe 10 years from now, someone's going to come back and say that was such a pivotal moment in time. These guys out of Michigan changed the entire landscape of the world. But it's okay. Sometimes you got to be like, hey, Tesla died in New York in a hotel room, broken poor. Today is regarded as probably the most, probably on the same level as Einstein. So look, I tell people all the time, you look at administrations. I call what I have here in some regard. You run a company like ours, which is public. It's an administration on a smaller scale, just like, for example, the current administration that's running America. That's an administration. How you judge an administration? You wait till the administration's done and you judge it 10 years later. What did they accomplish? So I laugh at people. I'm like, you want to judge me today? Go ahead. Judge me 10 years from now.
Commercial vehicles obviously have their own niche, and admittedly, our podcast doesn't always focus on that as much. I see the value, and I think a lot of people do as well, because it's kind of what keeps America moving. Where are you guys at on the more commercial passenger type cars?
Well, right now, the Mullen 5RS is planned for low volume production and a debut in the fourth quarter in 2025 in Europe. So it's a very pricey car because it's a very sophisticated and a very, the bill of materials in that car is ridiculous, but it's a ridiculous car. I call it a hyper car. It's not even it's a hyper SUV, and it's built to the materials that's built from, it's all carbon fiber based. You guys saw it when we debuted it at CES. It's an amazing vehicle. It's a true 200-mile-an-hour vehicle. A lot of guys talk about, they're the fastest 0 to 60. No one ever talks about the top end, because you can't get top end on an electric vehicle. It just doesn't happen. The consumption of energy doesn't allow it. But, we tasked our engineers, and when I told them, I said, I wanted to go 0 to 60 under 2 seconds, and I wanted to go over 200 miles. My engineers, told me, can't do that. You could pick one, David, right, Jason? They're like, pick one. You want 0 to 60, or do you want over 200? I said, I want both. So I made them deliver me both. And so, we have a vehicle that goes 0 to 60 in 1.95 seconds and goes 205 miles an hour.
Yeah, over 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, over 200 miles an hour. None of these guys, if you take a look, I don't care who they are, all of them, we do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. What's your top speed? 150.
Right.
I wanted to break the 200-mile barrier, right? That was my goal. And but I also wanted to be quick right off the jump.
Yeah.
So we accomplished that, and the engineering feat to do that for an electric vehicle is amazing. And then the car, I'm the first guy. I don't care what anybody says. I'm telling you, I knew that weight was an issue with all electric vehicles when it comes to wanting to achieve to break the 200-mile-an-hour barrier. And I looked at the best way to reduce weight. So we went with carbon composite materials, but I also looked at carbon ceramic rotors. And I looked, not because they look pretty, because they do, and not because they efficiently stop you. They're used in race vehicles. They took off almost 30 pounds of weight from each rotor. So if you have 4 rotors, what's 30 times 4?
120.
So 120 pounds of weight. Then I went with magnesium-based wheels. I wanted to reduce weight, but I wanted strength. So let's just say if we were able to take 250 to 300 pounds of weight off of the vehicle, and then carbon bucket seats, and on and on and on and on. You work towards reducing weight, right? Mass begets mass. So I went ahead and built what I believe to be an amazing machine and a work of art. So it's going to be a limited production vehicle, and we're going to, put it out in Europe in the fourth quarter in 2025. Jason, what's its projected price point?
Over $300,000. So probably be closer to $375,000.
But it's going to be a vehicle that will compete with your multi-million-dollar supercars. So, so you can't just say, hey, I don't call it, hey, here's just another electric car. No, it's a hypercar. It will get out there with the Koenigsegg. It'll get out there with, the Bugatti. It'll get out there with, the Pagani. In other words, its fit and finish will be so magnificent that you'll just want to put it in your garage and look at it. And that's a true collector. So I'm looking to establish a marquee vehicle that is something that you would not want to resell. That the resale market on it will be non-existent. It'll be like a Pagani. Go see if you can find one. Right.
Cool.
So we feel we'll sell 500 to 1,000 of them, and then that will drive the interest at some point down the road to come back to the U.S. with a similar version, less, your standard, 50, 60, $75,000 version of the vehicle based off of the supercar. Kind of like what Corvette does with the the Z06 and then the C8.
I think it was Dodge years ago that the Viper sold a lot of neons. I think I have heard that catchphrase before. Same kind of idea, I would guess.
Well, it does, like Mercedes does a lot of that too. You look at, past performance is indicative of future results.
Sure. Mercedes
has built a business by taking, I'll say like a Mercedes 300, right? Right. And so, a C300. Now you have an AMG C63. Same car put on steroids through AMG, right? Think about that.
Yep.
A C300 and a C63. So now it's AMG C63, AMG, quote unquote, high performance supercar, Porsche, 911, right? 911 are GT3 RS. Same body, different car.
Gotcha.
One car has 300 horsepower. The other car has 700 horsepower. One car weighs half as much as the other. One car, goes 250 miles an hour.
I'd like to jump back to the solid state battery. Obviously, you're testing. Where are you at for a projection on getting those live into production vehicles?
We think we can, and I want to take a very conservative approach. So there's steps, right? Once you get the chemistry to where you feel like you're where you want to be, and the form factor that you have, that form factor needs to be homologated, meaning you have your standard test, right? For water intrusion, crash, right? For penetration, all of the different things, the testing that you have to go through in that vehicle. Basically, you recertify the vehicle almost.
Yeah.
So I would project it 12 to 18 months from where we stop testing, which is still very, very fast. The projection, my engineers tell me by the end of the year, we'll be ready. I always want to pad it and add a little time to it, because even if we come next year, we're still light years ahead of everybody. There's no commercial viable solid state polymer solution on planet Earth. So if we were to come with one, believe me, that is a paradigm shift. We're talking about a paradigm shift. So I'm not going to brag about it. I'm just going to do it and then say, hey, here it is. You don't believe it? Come on, come touch it.
Right.
Come get in it with the United States seal on it saying it's been approved, EPA approved,
with a 70% efficiency or range improvement.
And comparing it to current range. So we took a class 1 using lithium iron phosphate technology through a CATL cell.
Okay.
And we took that same class 1, put our solid state solution in it, and right now it's greater than 70%.
Is there a significant weight reduction to that as well, in line with that 70%, I would assume? Or
no, because what happens is you use less space and you get the same density. So in essence, you make up for it in, you are right? There is a weight reduction, but we're increasing the range. So the weight technically would probably be the same. If you have a 42-hour kilowatt equivalent, if you can get 80 kilowatts in the same space. It's the same weight, but you've increased the capacity.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
So form factor stays the same, density increases.
I really enjoyed talking about this, David. It's fascinating, and the solid state battery stuff is super exciting.
I let the science do the speaking for me, right? So now, we have a whole different attitude here at Mullen. We're going to show you. So we go out of our way to take videos and post them on our webpage of actual testing being done with the actual solid state cell in the pack, in the vehicle. And we do that. We say, here you go, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're doing. We're focused on commercial product. That's our number one priority and focus. We're the only guy in class 1. We have an awesome class 3 vehicle. And we also got the Power Up, which is a amazing mobile power system that Jason and the guys have been working on for quite some time. And actually, I'd like Jason to tell you a little bit about it and how it came about. It wasn't something that was planned. It came out of need for our strikingly different tour, and it's got a tremendous amount of response across the globe. Jason, you want to take a minute and talk about Power Up?
Thank you, David. So just to tell you a little bit more about Power Up. So Power Up was over the last 3 years, we've done a number of stops across the U.S. showcasing our vehicles, our EV vehicles. We started this in 2022. We did roughly 15 stops across the U.S. at Major League Baseball stadiums and racetracks. And that first leg of the tour we did had a very small number of vehicles that we took with us. So we were able to charge those vehicles as we needed to. But what we did find on that first leg of the tour was there was almost no infrastructure to support EV charging at those stops. And again, we were at major stadiums and major parks and racetracks where, you hold major events, and none of them had support for EV charging. So when we started the second leg of the, or when we were envisioning the second leg of the tour that we did this last year in 2023, we knew that we needed to have a solution in place that could satisfy our charging needs on the road. We also had quite a few more vehicles that we were taking on the road with us on this last time, and that included our Class 1 EV cargo van. We had that vehicle with us, Class 3. So we had a number of new vehicles that we had taken on tour, including the Mullen 5 RS, which was mainly used on a racetrack. So we had quite a bit more energy needs on the road, and what we did is we took a look at what we needed, we spec'd out what we needed, and we had a vehicle built for us that is our mobile charging solution. And that is a Class 5 truck that's got DC fast charging built into it. The vehicle itself runs on propane. Also, the power gen set runs on propane as well. So what this does is this allows us to take power with us, and that vehicle supported us across the U.S. And as a result of having that use case need, we've now found that there's a market opportunity for that as well. So this is a perfect vehicle moving forward that would satisfy roadside assistance, AAA, different providers that are out there to help stranded motorists on the road, where you could pull up an EV charging truck or have an EV charging truck that would also satisfy other roadside assistance requirements.
Yeah.
And you could pull that truck up and you could plug somebody in and get them 10 to 15 miles of range in roughly 10 minutes. So similar to what you have now with roadside assistance, where they pull up with a jerry can if you're out of gas, and they'll give you, a few miles of distance to get you down the road to a gas station to fuel up. So what we see moving forward is, and as David had alluded to, we have received quite a few requests on Power Up, the mobile charging solution. And this is something that we're actively moving forward with, both on a larger Class 5 vehicle platform, but then also making configurations available for our own vehicles, which is a Class 3 EV cab chassis truck, and then also a Class 1 EV cargo van. So
cool.
Really unique, really, I think you're going to see this opportunity really expand, not just with us, but with other providers in the market. As we see EV transition happen, throughout the U.S., the infrastructure is going to take a little bit longer to catch up. So And you're always going to have a roadside assistance scenario where you're going to need something, in an inconvenient spot
Right.
to plug somebody in and get them down the road. So there's a good opportunity for this as we move forward, and it's something we're really excited about.
Where someone could buy a Mullen commercial vehicle if they wanted it.
Yeah. So our current distribution network right now is with Mullen Automotive Group. So if anyone's interested in a Class 1 EV cargo van or a Class 3 EV cab chassis truck, the best thing to do is to reach out to us on mullenusa.com. Submit a request for some information. What we'll do is we'll follow up with you directly, and then we'll pass that over to our distributor, which is Mullen Automotive Group. They're actually one of the largest commercial dealers in the U.S. They're the distributor of record for our vehicles, and then they would actually handle the sales transaction on the vehicles. So both the Class 1 and the Class 3 are available now in all 50 states. We have all of our certifications, EPA, CARB, Department of Transportation. So all of those are in place, and all those vehicles are available throughout the U.S. So
Great. Well, I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to hear more from you soon.
Thank you, Tom. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Plug In for More. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, check out the one-stop EV marketplace, evuniverse.com. Until next time.